Concluded. Are there any questions? Without notice, I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Today we welcome the Prime Minister of Solomon Islands, Matthew Wale, to this place. Solomon Islands is a dear neighbour and an indispensable friend to Australia. What is the government doing to deepen this friendship and support the sovereignty of sovereign islands in the face of disruptions to peace in the Pacific?
The call to the Honourable the Prime Minister.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition. It indeed was an absolute pleasure to welcome the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands, Matthew Wale, and his ministers to our nation's capital. I ask everyone to give them a welcome. Our nation is very honoured that the Prime Minister has chosen Australia for his first overseas visit since taking office just a few days ago, really, but about 2 weeks ago. That decision reflects the history and the deep bonds of cooperation that have linked our two nations and our two peoples over decades. As Prime Minister Wale said earlier today, the resilience of our relationship is self-evident, and it certainly is. At the request of the Solomon Islands, our two nations will commence negotiations on a new comprehensive treaty, underpinned by mutual trust, respect and open dialogue. This new treaty will help us confront global and regional challenges together as equal partners in the pursuit of peace across the Blue Pacific that we proudly share. Australia warmly welcomes the Solomon Islands signature to the Pacific Policing Initiative, and the Prime Minister will visit the Pinkenba facility tomorrow and just see the work that the Australian Federal Police are doing, along with their police counterparts throughout the Pacific, on getting that common culture in policing throughout the Pacific, making the security of all of our nations in the Pacific family that much stronger. This is also about building our regional security. And, Mr Speaker, Australia and the Solomons, like so many in our Pacific family, recognise that peace and security in the Pacific must come from within the Pacific. That is a key distinction. And the Prime Minister today, I welcome the comments that we had at our one-on-one dialogue, our meeting with senior Cabinet Ministers. He'll meet the Leader of the Opposition later this afternoon and members of his team. This is a very significant visit for Australia indeed, one of the most significant that we have had during my time as Prime Minister that we could possibly have, because the Solomons is, of course, very close neighbours to us. And we know there have been pressures on the Solomon Islands and that there have been bumps in the road. But this is an absolutely important journey that Prime Minister Wale and I have embarked upon today. He will be an honoured guest. Jodie and I will host Prime Minister Wale and Madam Wale this evening at the Lodge to further cement the personal relationship that we have. At a time of global disruption, respectful engagement between equal partners looking to solve shared challenges and seize shared opportunities is more important than ever. In education, in security, in tackling climate change, in economic resilience and in economic development. Because it's through these relationships, based in mutual trust, respect and dialogue, that we will build and strengthen our shared future as members of the Pacific family and bring security and opportunity to our peoples. I thank Prime Minister Wale for the invitation that I have, and I'm hoping to visit the Solomon Islands to reciprocate in a month's time. And I look forward to us continuing to work together on this treaty, which will be very much in the interests of both of our nations.
Indulgence, the Leader of the Opposition.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I associate the opposition with the fine words of the Prime Minister? And can I welcome Prime Minister Wale, welcome to you, your wife and the Solomon Islands delegation on a cold and rainy day in Canberra, of course. Next month, Solomon Islands celebrates 48 years of being an independent nation. And ahead of that anniversary, and on behalf of the federal opposition, my best wishes to you and the people of the Solomon Islands. In 1978, as your people ushered in nationhood, profound words were spoken by your first Prime Minister, Peter Kenilorea. He said, "Independence means having our own political freedom, our own status, our national identity, dignity and self-respect as a nation." Prime Minister Wale, Australia is unwavering in its support for Solomon Islands' sovereignty and freedom, particularly in an age of emboldened authoritarian regimes who respect or disrespect neither freedom nor sovereignty. Solomon Islands will always have a friend in Australia, just as Australia will always have a friend in the Solomon Islands. I look forward to seeing the growing engagement between our police forces we've just heard about. I also welcome the news that Canberra and Honiara will begin negotiations on a new comprehensive treaty. You are a most welcome guest in our country and a dear friend.
I give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Today's national accounts show GDP per person went backwards in the March quarter for the 10th time out of 15 quarters under Labor. On Labor's watch, more than 1.4 million migrants have arrived in Australia. Prime Minister, why is out-of-control migration your only strategy to achieve economic growth?
Call to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister has the call.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his question and confirming when I spoke with Prime Minister Wale earlier today, I said that our parliament can often be a bit robust. It began well and it's headed downhill pretty quickly. Mr. Speaker. Migration.
Order.
Well, our Australian economy is growing. And it grew, fun fact,
members on my left,
by 0.3% in the March quarter to be 2.5% higher during the year, which under the circumstances of what is happening, in the March quarter there was this event on February 28. There was this little event that had that they say is an excuse.
member for Herbert.
This is the mob who earlier on in 90-second statements also criticised the work that we had done on fuel security. There is no country you would rather be than Australia, particularly if you talk to people in our region about what is happening. Countries in our region where they have compulsory public holidays once a week because there isn't enough fuel. What we have managed to do is to secure more fuel in Australia than was there on February 28th. We've been able to do that in spite of the fact that the Leader of the Opposition actually ridiculed and criticised us for going to Singapore, for going to Brunei, for going to Malaysia.
For a moment, and we'll hear from the order. We'll just get the Prime Minister to pause for a moment. I'll hear from the manager on the point of order.
Thanks, Speaker. Goes to direct relevance. The question was about out-of-control migration and anaemic economic growth. Will you please come back to it?
Yeah. The question also included the growth figures of today and then the question of immigration and why out-of-control migration is the only strategy to achieve growth. I think the Prime Minister is saying that is not accurate, so he's going to have to... He is being directly relevant, so it's a pretty broad question covering a number of topics. So, order. The Prime Minister will continue.
I take the interjection, which actually just said nothing about fuel security, as if what is happening in the global economy has nothing to do with an impact here.
All unrelated.
we have received 2.5% annual growth, which under the circumstances of the pressures that are on, and the leader of the Liberal One National Party over there, you know, the Liberal One National Party, who comes in here,
Member for Barker. Order. Members on my left.
You wake up angry.
Well, order.
in spite of the fact that they know that the migration rate has fallen by 45%. And what they do is come in here, pretend that we're immune from a global impact of a global war.
Order. Promises. Order. It's way too many interjections during that. Member for Casey, member for Bowman, member for Barker, member for Herbert. We're just going to reset. And the House comes to order. When the member for Herbert ceases, we will hear the question. Member for Solomon has the call.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs. How is the Albanese Labor government helping to deliver a safe, peaceful and prosperous Pacific?
Give a call to the Minister of Defence Industry and the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs.
I thank the member for his question and his passion for our relationships with the Pacific. Speaker, we're committed to building relationships with the Pacific family. Australia's prosperity and security depends upon a safe and prosperous Pacific. We turn up, we listen and we act on the priorities of our Pacific friends. And that's why we're delighted to welcome Prime Minister Wale and his high-powered ministerial delegation to Australia. The fact that you chose Australia for your first international visit so recently after being appointed is a tremendous compliment to us that we take seriously. We're inspired by your ambitious objectives for your people and we're committed to working with you to achieve them. We're delighted that we've agreed to reset the relationship through a comprehensive, strategic, transformative treaty. This will build on a base that's already very strong. In my numerous visits to Solomon Islands, I've been inspired by the love and affection our two peoples hold for each other. 50% of tourists to your wonderful country come from Australia. We're your largest export destination. And through the Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme, over 12,000 Solomon Islanders have come to Australia, and there's 5,000 right now filling critical labour shortages, sending back on average $1,500 per month to their families. In a recent visit to Honiara, I met Gerard and Joseph, two returned meat workers who spent 3 years away from their families, filling labour shortages in our abattoirs. They now had the skills and savings to set up businesses in the Solomon Islands, growing your economy. We're also privileged to be your largest development partner, acting on your priorities. I was delighted to open the $60 million National Transport Fund with Minister Ricky, with an important innovation where we designated every dollar had to go to a Solomon Islands company. That meant that you got the double dividend of both the infrastructure but the skills and capacity building to build your economy. And I call on all development partners, if it's good enough to fund projects in the Pacific, it's good enough to trust Pacific companies and Pacific workers with that work. I was also delighted through the Leaders' Communique today to announce further support for your cyclone recovery, as well as 1,500 vocational scholarships. We're committed to working on your priorities, Prime Minister. So I say to you, Prime Minister Wale, and to your ministers, thank you too much for coming to Australia. Thank you too much for your partnership. And to the wonderful people of the Solomon Islands, thank you too much for the affection you hold to Australia. Thank you.
Give a call to the member for Goldstein.
No one's hearing you, man. My question is to the Treasurer. This week, economist Richard Holden described Labor's CGT changes as, quote, a productivity-seeking missile that identifies the most dynamic, highest growth job-creating businesses and taxes them at huge rates. Today's national accounts show the sharpest fall in productivity in almost 2 years, with productivity down more than 5% on Labor's watch. Treasurer, why is Labor introducing a productivity tax during a productivity crisis?
Call to the Treasurer.
I just said to the Deputy Prime Minister, Mr Speaker, I hope the Shadow Treasurer asks me about productivity, and he has. There's three reasons I'm pleased. There's three reasons I'm pleased he's asking me about productivity, Mr Speaker. The first reason is because the budget that we handed down from this dispatch box a few weeks ago was more focused on the productivity challenge than any of the budgets handed down by those opposite in the wasted decade of missed opportunities which preceded us. That's the first point. The second point, Mr Speaker, is I'm told that the Shadow Treasurer put out a press release today talking about productivity, and this is what he said about productivity. He said that productivity is down 5% since this government took office. And so I checked out that number, Mr Speaker, and I'm pleased that I did. I want to tell the House why I'm pleased that I checked out that number. It turns out that the 5% number that the Shadow Treasurer is using includes the March quarter of 2022. Now, Mr Speaker, we were elected in May of 2022 the first time, and so in March quarter of 2022, and so I thought to myself, I wonder why he's including the March quarter of 2022 and pretending Labor was in office when the Coalition was in office. And let me tell you why he's doing that, Mr Speaker. It's because productivity in the March quarter of 2022 fell by 2.3%. And that was the biggest fall in productivity in more than 40 years, Mr Speaker. So it always pays to check the numbers. It always pays to check the numbers. The Shadow Treasurer, he got the fuel excise wrong. He got his fuel security policy wrong. He got the amount of shareholders amongst young people wrong. He got the dual mandate wrong for the Reserve Bank, Mr Speaker. Again and again and again, Mr Speaker.
Order. Members on my right. The member for McNamara. Order. The manager's entitled to raise his point of order, and he shall do so now in silence.
Just on relevance, Speaker, the question was about why are you putting in place a productivity tax during a productivity crisis?
Yep. Yes, that was the question, but the other issues I think the Treasurers are addressing are regarding the capital gain taxes changes. They're just the way they were described as a missile that identifies most dynamic, highest growth, job creating and a whole lot of other things. So the Prime Minister wasn't asked about the opposition, so I think he's... Order. Don't question me, member for Herbert, when I am dealing with the manager's point of order. So I'm just going to make sure that the Treasurer is being directly relevant. He won't be able to talk about the opposition's policy because he wasn't asked about the opposition's policy. He was asked about his policies.
Thank you.
Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I was asked about productivity and the performance of productivity in our economy, and I've explained why the number that the Shadow Treasurer used today is especially dishonest. Now, when it comes to the tax reforms, when it comes to tax reforms in the budget, Mr Speaker, when it comes to the tax reforms in the budget, Mr Speaker, it takes a special kind of thinker to see a productivity challenge which has existed in our economy for decades and to think the answer to that, Mr Speaker, is to leave everything exactly as it is. To leave everything exactly as it is. And when Howard and Costello made the big mistake at the turn of the century, they said that share investment would go up and it went down. It turbocharged the challenges we have in our housing market. It locked generation after generation of young people out of housing. We're taking the difficult decisions to change that, and we've got a budget which is very focused on productivity as well.
The House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Spence.
Speaker, my question is for the Deputy Prime Minister. Since coming to office, what progress has been made by the Albanese government to deliver Australia's future AUKUS submarines?
Give a call to... When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the Honourable the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence.
Well, can I thank the member for his question, acknowledge his service, but also the contribution that his state is making to this great national endeavour. Mr Speaker, AUKUS is happening. From 2021, when AUKUS was first announced by the Morrison government, and I acknowledge the contribution of that government to bringing these three countries together, what was then an idea and a concept, today is a great national project in full flight. On this day, there are 220 submariners working on Virginia-class submarines serving in the US Navy. There's another 220 ASC workers at Pearl Harbor gaining invaluable experience getting those same submarines out to sea. There are 100 workers building the Skills and Training Academy at the Osborne Naval Shipyard in Adelaide, another 900 working on the submarine construction yard at Osborne, 250 building facilities at the HMAS Stirling in preparation for the Submarine Rotation Force West, which begins next year. In total, this is more than 1,000 high-skilled, high-paid jobs right now, union jobs, providing income, livelihoods, supporting families, and we are not about to do anything which disrupts that. And in just a few years, we will see 10,000 workers at Osborne, thousands more at Henderson, and these will be the largest, the highest-tech industrial facilities in our country. Now, through AUKUS, the Royal Navy will operate 8 nuclear-powered submarines. That one of those, just one, is shifting from being a new Virginia to an in-service Virginia is a good deal. It provides consistency. Against a backdrop of complexity, this makes it just a little easier and is a good financial deal. And to be frank, this is what we wanted from the start, and that this is now what is going to happen is a great outcome for Australia. Now, Mr Speaker, we are a three-ocean nation, and so building our submarine capability fundamentally builds our national sovereignty. And were we to lose that submarine capability, we would become more reliant, not less, on our alliance with the United States. And so the Albanese government is utterly committed to Australia being a submarine nation, and we are utterly committed to AUKUS and, through that, building a submarine capability which will keep Australians safe.
I call the member for Warringah. I'll just do some acknowledgements briefly. I'm pleased to welcome in the Distinguished Visitors Gallery today Her Excellency Mrs Sarojini Srinivasan, the High Commissioner of Mauritius to Australia, and Her Excellency Ms Doris Arjon Deo Bracey, the High Commissioner of the Republic of Ghana to Australia. And I'm also pleased to acknowledge representatives of the local government of New South Wales, including President Councillor Darcy Byrne, the Mayor of Inner West Council and the CEO, David Reynolds. Welcome to Question Time. Give the call to the honourable member for Warringah.
To the Prime Minister. In the 1980s, your Labor mentor Tom Uren fought to stop Commonwealth from selling off HMAS Penguin at Balmoral. In 2021, you invoked Uren in Parliament, saying Sydney Harbour belongs to the nation and should stay in public hands. So why is your government now planning to sell off parts of Penguin at Middlehead against community wishes? And will you commit to setting aside Angorora remnant bushland for conservation and keeping historic buildings in public hands?
Call to the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence.
Well, I thank the member for her question.
Order. The member for Mitchell.
For too long, the question of defence as a state has been ignored. It was certainly ignored by those opposite when they were in government. And so, as a result, when we look through the Defence Strategic Review about the bases that we need, the focus is on creating much more capable northern bases which can project our Air Force further. But in the same breath, it highlights the fact that as the largest landowner in the country, Defence today is operating many properties which are costing it not hundreds of thousands but hundreds of millions of dollars to maintain, and yet those properties do nothing in terms of Australia's capability. Now, we hear guffawing from those opposite, and we hear it because in their 9 years in government, they rotated defence ministers through the portfolio so quickly that they could never get around to the business of actually managing defence, and they left this as an untouched area.
Order. The Minister for Pacific Island Affairs cease rejecting. I want to hear from the manager.
I'm not. It's just goes to relevance, Speaker. There was nothing about the opposition in this question. It was about remnant vegetation and your fire sale
Resume your seat. Thank you. The Deputy Prime Minister won't be able to talk about opposition policies or any previous opposition because he was asked about the government's plans that they are undertaking, which you're responsible for. So do not stray into those territories anymore. The manager is correct. Order. The member for Canning will leave the chamber under 94A. Well, I didn't hear what he said, but it's interrupting when I'm dealing with the manager, with your manager of opposition business, ruling in his favour that he wants to then heckle him. So I don't know why that's happening. But anyway, order. So if everyone can just show a bit of respect and courtesy to each other, we'll deal with one thing at a time, instead of this constant bickering and yelling over each other. It's unbecoming, and I won't have it in the House. Deputy Prime Minister will return to the question.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. And look, I can understand the opposition's sensitivity because for 9 long years they squibbed the issue and they're squibbing it now. HMAS Penguin.
No, you don't need to resume your seat. I know what you're going to say. Deputy Prime Minister, I just told you not to do that, and I told you not to mention the opposition. You're defying me. If you do it again, I will sit you down. So return to the question or resume your seat. The Deputy Prime Minister has the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Dealing with the estate is business which is long overdue in terms of managing defence policy. And so, as a government, we actually are tackling difficult issues. Now, we are working with communities around Australia who are proximate to each of these estates, each of these defence properties, each of these bases, including HMAS Penguin. And we are absolutely committed to working through with the community what is the future use in respect of HMAS Penguin. And we have been doing that from the moment that we did the Defence Estate audit and had an examination as to whether each of these properties had a role to play in our Defence Force, and if not, what role they could otherwise play. Now, as the member, I assume, may know, the process that we have announced is that these properties will be transferred from the Department of Defence to the Department of Finance relatively quickly over a period of the next couple of years. But from there, the process of disposing of the properties will take as long as it does, and that means that there will be adequate time in which to engage with communities to deal with questions such as the one that the honourable member has raised. And we certainly are very willing to work through with the honourable member those issues, along with the Assistant Minister for Defence, the member for Wills, who has carriage of this, to make sure that as we manage the future of HMAS Penguin, be it inside Defence or beyond, it is a future which has the best outcome for the community in your electorate.
The call to the member for McEwen.
Question is to the Treasurer. What does today's national accounts data tell us about the resilience of Australia's economy, and how does the government's economic agenda compare to other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank the member for McEwen for his question, but also for being an absolute champion of the working people and his communities in and around Melbourne and the outer suburbs there, Mr Speaker. Today's national accounts, as the PM said, showed that the Australian economy grew 0.3% in the March quarter, 2.5% through the year. This is a very solid outcome in the circumstances, Mr Speaker. We have our fair share of challenges in our economy, but we've also got sturdy foundations as well. This is the equal fastest annual growth in almost 3 years, Mr Speaker.
Warned, and I'm going to just interrupt the member for Page is just interjecting way too much. For the remainder of question time, I want you to assist the House, control yourself, not interject anymore. Treasurer will continue.
Thank you. These national accounts show how resilient our economy is at a time of very substantial global economic volatility. But the biggest story from these national accounts was the contribution made by the private sector, and particularly business investment, Mr Speaker. Private sector investment in our economy is booming in these March national accounts. Economic growth was driven by strong growth in business investment, solid consumption and ongoing growth in dwelling investment as well, Mr Speaker. Now, those opposite haven't mentioned any of that because they're determined to talk the Australian economy down and the Australian people down. But these are the facts in today's national accounts, Mr Speaker. Now, the biggest contributor to growth was business investment. It's the fastest quarterly growth in nearly a decade and a half. New business investment grew 5.7%. It's more than 10% higher through the year. It made a big contribution to quarterly growth as well, Mr Speaker. So the outlook for investment is encouraging. The CapEx survey last week upgraded the level of nominal spending in investment to around $200 billion each year, when that CapEx number came in 6 times higher than expected. Now, most importantly, Mr Speaker, as a share of our economy, business investment is now 12.9%. It was 11.3% when we came to office. Annualised average new business investment is growing at 5.2% under this Labor government. It was going backwards by an average of 1.3% under those opposite, Mr Speaker. Now, when it comes to these numbers, the pick-up in the private economy is the most important part of the story, and our budget, whether it's the productivity package, our focus on resilience and reform, is all about responding to these challenges but also making the most of our opportunities at a time of considerable uncertainty in the world. Now, there will always be those who want to talk down the Australian economy and the Australian people for partisan political purposes, Mr Speaker, and I can hear those opposite chirping away, outing themselves as the guilty party when it comes to talking down the Australian economy, Mr Speaker. Their strategy is to talk down our economy, to talk up division in our society and to vote against tax cuts and a fair go for first home buyers. This side of the House is cutting taxes, boosting wages and making the housing market fairer for first home buyers.
Treasurer's time has concluded. Give the call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister promised Australians they would be better off. Today's national accounts show living standards going backwards. Since Labor came to office, Australians have experienced the sharpest fall in living standards in the developed world. When will the Prime Minister admit his economic strategy has failed Australians?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, we see a global crisis as an opportunity, to talk Australia up. They see it as an opportunity to talk Australia down. We have growth today of 2.5%, which is higher than it is higher than a majority of the OECD. Higher. And the leader of the Liberal One Nationals over there says it's the worst in the world. Well, the OECD, mate. The OECD is the developed world.
Order. Members on my left.
That's what it stands for. The OECD. It's this little body based in Paris. Now, we are growing faster than most of the developed world.
Order. The Leader of the Opposition is just going to cease interjection.
We have Timu Abbott over here trying to press buttons.
The member for Forest.
and divide Australia, as they always do, when the fact is we have, as a result of this week, we have an economy that's growing. We have private sector investment, which is growing substantially and driving that economy.
The member for Goldstein.
We have higher wages as a result of the 4.7%. Something that those opposite and those in the Liberal One National coalition of the three parties speak about battlers from time to time, but give a battler a wage increase and they hate it.
Has the Prime Minister concluded his answer? Has the Prime Minister concluded his answer? The manager on a point of order.
Irrelevant, Speaker. This question didn't ask anything about the opposition. It was about falling living standards that are far.
Yeah. And I think that's the bit the Prime Minister is disagreeing with in his answer regarding the question. So he's entitled to disagree with the question, all right, as every Prime Minister and Minister have done, certainly since I've been in the Parliament. So he's not breaking ground there. So let's just listen to the order. Let's listen to the Prime Minister, because the Leader of the Opposition was heard in silence. So I think it will be the best interest of the House if everyone just calms down and listens to the Prime Minister.
When it comes to living standards, Mr Speaker, there are two issues we've seen this week. A 4.7% increase for those people on the minimum wage, taking it for the first time to above $1,000. They say, what's that got to do with living standards?
Oh, exactly.
People's wages. People earning more.
Wages have got nothing to do with it. Wages have got nothing to do with it.
Those opposite...
Order.
We know it's a long time since they saw a minimum wage. And tax cuts.
Order.
And tax cuts, which they're going to vote against on Thursday.
The member from Moncrieff.
Wages have got nothing to do with living standards.
All right. Now the House has come to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Blair.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Housing. How is the Albanese Labor government helping more Australians into home ownership, and what results are we seeing from the 5% deposit scheme? Why is this approach more beneficial than other approaches to housing?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you so much, Speaker, and I thank the member for Blair for his question. Not only is he a superb representative of his local community, Speaker, but in part because of his advocacy, we have now supported 5,000 of his constituents into home ownership through the first for the 5% deposit program. Now, Speaker, there is no greater aspiration in the life of most Australian families than getting into a home of their own. And, Speaker, there is no shortage of aspiration coming from young Australians. The problem is opportunity. Young Australians want to buy a home. They want security, they want stability, they want a home to build their future, and what they need and deserve is fair chance and a government that will back them in, and that's what they're getting from us, Speaker. Now, Speaker, this is exactly what our Homes for Australia plan provides. Under the 5% deposit scheme, more than 250,000 Australians have bought a home of their own. Together, those Australians have avoided more than $2.3 billion in lenders' mortgage insurance. Now, Speaker, about 60% of the people who enter this scheme actually come in with a deposit that's larger than 5%. Nearly 70% are ahead on their mortgage repayments, Speaker. And 1 in 4 of these scheme participants have built up so much equity in their home they've transitioned off the scheme altogether. Speaker, the Commonwealth Bank recently confirmed that participants in the scheme are outperforming their broader mortgage books when it comes to repayments. How good is that? And, Speaker, what it shows us is that when you give young people around this country an opportunity, they grab it with both hands. That's because young people were never the problem here. They needed a chance, they needed the government to back them in, and that's exactly what we're doing. Speaker, our 5% deposit program is helping Australians get to auctions sooner, and the changes in our budget will make sure they have a fair shot when they get there. Now, Speaker, I'm asked about alternative approaches. The three right-wing parties, One Nation and their poor tribute acts, do have very different views about how to manage housing. Instead of trying to help, Speaker, those opposite spend their time talking down the 250,000 Australians who have used this scheme. We've heard the Liberals call it a gimmick, we've heard the Nationals call it a scam, and we've heard One Nation call it socialism, Speaker. I don't know how you call 250,000 Australians in home ownership socialism, but there you have it. Now, Speaker, you can't back first home buyers and then critique and belittle the choices that they make. We are incredibly proud to have helped more than 250,000 people around our country realise the dream of home ownership, Speaker, and there will be more where that came from.
For the call to the honourable member, the Minister for Social Services. I'm not. Okay, Member for Lindsay. It's okay. I heard it. That's why I cautioned her. Okay. Now the member for Moncrieff I'd like to give the call to.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, after that entrance. My question is to the Minister for Sport. There are over 70,000 community sporting clubs across Australia, many of which rely on donations from trusts. How many community sporting clubs will now feel the brunt of Labor's minimum 30% tax on trusts?
Order. No, we're not having that sort of interjection. The member for McEwen will leave the chamber under 94A. We're not having that. I've made it crystal clear when people are asking questions that is not the time to interject. Trust me, if I can hear you from there, it's pretty loud. Okay? So out of respect for the member for Moncrieff, we're going to hear her question. We'll hear it in silence, and we'll show everyone the same level of respect. The member for Moncrieff has the call.
My question is to the Minister for Sport. There are over 70,000 community sporting clubs across Australia, many of which rely on donations from trusts. How many community sporting clubs will now feel the brunt of Labor's minimum 30% tax on trusts?
The Leader of the House.
Just raising a point of order, Mr Speaker, on the direction of the question. My understanding from practice that when a question goes to an actual different portfolio area to the minister who would be responsible for the policy involved, whoever is the most relevant person to the particular question is the person who should stand. That there's a principle in practice. I wasn't able to grab the book out in time, but this is starting to happen a number of times in question time.
All right, we'll just get the member for Moncrieff can resume her seat. Order. The transfer of questions has always been a principle, and that's applied a number of times in this parliament and last parliament as well.
It was asked to the Minister for Sport because it was around the 70,000 community sporting clubs. So.
Yeah, that's. I understand, and it is the practice which allows the transfer of questions to ministers. That's always been a standing arrangement of the House, and that is able to happen. So, I appreciate the members asked her question. Now, the Treasurer will answer the question. Order. Member for Forrest. Do not interject anymore.
Forrest? Sure he didn't.
Order.
Sure he didn't.
Okay, the Treasurer.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. As those opposite are aware, charitable trusts are exempt from the minimum, and there are other exemptions as well. When it comes to fixed trusts, for example, they are exempt, and there's other kinds of exemptions and concessions built into the proposal that we put in the budget, Mr Speaker. And as always, when it comes to tax reform of this kind, the final implementation details are subject to the usual kind of consultation.
Order. 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 Before I call the member for Canberra, we're just going to allow the House to order. Just for all members' benefit, just the way that question was handled was practice, page 549, about the transfer. Manager of Opposition Business, just so you're aware. It's page 549 of practice. Anyway, we'll move to the member for Canberra.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Skills and Training. How is the Albanese Labor government's key apprenticeship program supporting more tradies to build more homes? And what has been the response to the program?
Excellent. Give the call to the Minister for Skills and the Minister for Training.
Thanks very much, Speaker, and thank you to my friend, the member for Canberra, for her question. Like everyone on this side of the House, she understands just how critical it is that we pull on the full range of levers to ensure that more homes are being built for Australians. And this morning, the member for Canberra and I were with the Minister for Housing in the northern suburbs of Canberra to meet Caitlin. Now, Caitlin is an electrician and she's a small business owner. Caitlin this year has taken on an apprentice, an amazing young woman called Poppy. Poppy's just 16, but she knew that she always wanted to undertake a trade. And Caitlin and Poppy, they are both benefiting from the Albanese government's key apprenticeship program. $10,000 for an apprentice, paid in instalments, backing apprentices like Poppy to start and, most importantly, to finish their apprenticeship. Caitlin benefits too because she's amongst the thousands of small business owners backed by an employer incentive as well. So, Speaker, we now have 25,000 new housing construction apprentices who've signed up to the Key Apprenticeship program in just the first 10 months. That's 25,000 Australian apprentices who we're backing to build more homes in every corner of this country. 9,300 more chippies, 5,300 more plumbers, 4,800 more sparkies like Poppy and the member for Moore as well. More signing up every week, Speaker, more signing up every week. We are providing targeted support through this program to businesses like Caitlin's to take on apprentices and to apprentices just like Poppy to become qualified tradies. On this side of the House, in the Albanese Labor government, we're helping Australians get trained to build more homes. Building homes, not hamburgers, as was the case under the former government's back and CAC schemes. Now, the Leader of the Opposition, he's got a lot to say when it comes to talking Australians down and seeking to divide.
Order. The Minister will pause. The member for Riverina.
For Canberra's question was admirably tight. He wasn't asked about opposition policies, wasn't asked about the opposition. He was just asked about Labor's own policies.
All right, I'll deal with this. Oh, yeah. The Minister was asked about what has been the response to the program, so I assume he's going to talk about what the opposition's response to the program was. So he is. Order. The Leader of the Opposition can please just assist the House and me at the moment while I deal with this matter. So the Minister was being relevant because he was asked about what's the response, and he's going to tell the House what the response was.
So I was telling the House about Caitlin's response and Poppy's response and the response of 25,000 Australians. Your response, Leader of the Opposition, is always to talk Australians down and always to divide communities. You can't even say the word TAFE. You don't support free TAFE, which has seen 742,000 enrolments in just the 3 years. But tell us, Leader of the Opposition, do you support the Key Apprenticeship program and support what it is delivering to Australian apprentices? Or do you agree with your Shadow Minister who said the program is wrong and throwing good money after bad money? Small businesses and Australians deserve to know. The Albanese government backs small businesses and we back apprentices like Poppy, whereas all of the right-wing parties over there are always talking Australians down while we're backing Australians to get a trade to build more homes for Australians.
The call to the member for Lyne.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Assistant Treasurer. Australia's not-for-profits include donors' trusts, including non-government schools and churches, will now be impacted by Labor's minimum 30% tax on trusts. How much do not-for-profits stand to lose from the effects of Labor's toxic taxes?
Good call to the Assistant Treasurer and Minister for Financial Services.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for the question. And can I reiterate the points that the Treasurer made, that there are a number of very clear exemptions when it comes to trusts from the policies that have been announced, charitable trusts and fixed trusts.
Members on my left,
and can I undertake that the policy that we are putting forward in this budget is to better align taxation arrangements for those who receive income from work, as opposed to those who receive income from capital and from trusts, and that is something which has been called for a long time.
Resume your seat. The minister's concluded his answer. All right. Everyone in the House comes to order. The member for Mitchell, I can hear loud and clear. Give the call to the member for Werriwa.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting working Australians after a decade of wages being kept deliberately low?
Call to the Minister for Employment and the Minister for Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Werriwa for her question and for her long-standing advocacy for getting better pay and conditions for workers in this country. Now, since coming to government, Labor has been focused on helping Australian workers earn more and keep more of what they earn. From enshrining penalty rates into law to our same job, same pay reforms, we back fair pay for workers. This government has advocated each and every year to the Fair Work Commission to boost the wages of our low-paid workers. And just yesterday, the Fair Work Commission handed down its decision to award a 4.75% wage increase for modern award-reliant workers in Australia. Now, in their decision, they also recognise that the lowest-paid workers relying on the national minimum wage needed additional support and awarded those workers a 6% pay increase. These workers will be now earning over $1,000 a week. Now, this decision represents a real wage increase, providing real cost of living relief for retail workers like Janita. Janita welcomed the decision yesterday and said that this pay rise, and I quote, would definitely help us get ahead. It will make a difference for support workers like Lika, who said that this pay rise was a win and will assist her and her co-workers with everyday costs. And it will help youth workers like Jordan, who said that these extra dollars mean that I can spend more time with my family. This government welcomes the Fair Work decision because workers like Janita, Lika, Jordan and millions of others deserve a pay increase. Now, Mr Speaker, of course, we all know that when those were in opposition, when those opposite were in government, they never once advocated to the Commission for a real wage increase. And, of course, they kept wages deliberately low as part of their economic architecture. But even in opposition, you would have thought that they had learnt their lesson. But they haven't changed their approach. Indeed, Senator Hume made the opposition's position very clear when she said that if the Fair Work decision comes down at a rate that's higher than inflation, that would be the worst thing for Australians. And even yesterday, in her media release about the decision, she failed to back this pay increase for hard-working Australians. When the coalition fails to back workers like Janita, Lika and Jordan, it is our Labor government that has their back. These workers deserve a pay increase and they deserve a government that backs them.
Before I call the member for Ryan, I'm also pleased to advise in the House today as the guest of the member for Braddon, Phil and Vicky Purnell. Give the call to the honourable member for Ryan.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. According to Oxfam, over the last year, 17 more billionaires have been added to Australia's billionaires list, now at 178. This time next year, do you think there should be fewer or more Australian billionaires?
That question I've got some difficulties with because it's asking for an opinion. And you can't ask a minister regarding their opinions, otherwise we would be here all day if it was the case. Order. But just to remind all members that they can't ask ministers or prime ministers opinions, and it's not the responsibility of the PM, so we'll have to be lenient with this one, and the Prime Minister will get some latitude in answering this question as a result of the way it was asked.
I thank the member for Ryan for her interesting question. I will make some comments about aspiration, though. What I want is for people to be as successful as possible. Now, for most people, overwhelmingly, that's not about whether there are more billionaires or not. It's about whether they get a roof over their head that they own. Most Australians don't aspire to be billionaires. What they do aspire to, though, is to live a life of comfort, is to be able to retire with decent superannuation, which is why we're putting that in place. They aspire to, if they get sick or their kids get sick, to be able to get health care through Medicare. And one of the great things about this country is that when Kerry Packer had a heart attack, he ended up at my local hospital, Royal Prince Alfred Hospital, and he got the same care in the emergency department as my mum, the invalid pensioner, did when she passed away, having gone through the same level of care that Kerry Packer got at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital. That's what they aspire to. They aspire as well to make the most of themselves, and that's why we're investing in early childhood education. That's why from this year began the fair and full funding for every student in every public school, as well as in every private school across Australia. They aspire to make sure that they are able to live a life which is free from conflict as well, which is why we work in the international community to build relations in our region, which is why Australia is a voice for multilateralism and those institutions that we think is important as well. When it comes to, I got a question earlier on about living standards and the quality of life that people have, just a few fun facts. Living standards were up over the last year on the annual basis. Living standards were falling 1.5% in the quarter before we came to office. 1.5% in just one quarter. And the latest OECD data shows that living standards are growing almost 3 times the OECD average of advanced economies. And so my government is absolutely committed to a better quality of life overwhelmingly for Australians, which is why, as well, when we've had to make difficult decisions, like on where income tax cuts will be targeted, we've targeted it at low and middle income earners, which is why also we support the minimum wage increases that were granted by the Fair Work Commission.
Call to the honourable member for Bass.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to strengthen paid parental leave, and what are the risks?
Great question. Give a call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I want to thank the marvellous member for Bass for her question. I know that she is a great supporter of paid parental leave because of the terrific use her constituents have made of it. Before the Rudd and Gillard governments, Australia was one of the very few advanced economies that didn't have a paid parental leave scheme. Labor introduced paid parental leave, and Labor continues to build on and expand paid parental leave. People who use paid parental leave will get more time. From the 1st of July this year, we're going to the full 6 months of paid parental leave. They'll get more money. We've been increasing the amount that they receive, and thanks to yesterday's minimum wage announcement, families will now receive almost $30,000 across their paid parental leave. They're almost $16,000 better off since just 2022 with the election of the Albanese Labor government. Of course, families will also receive more flexibility. Parents will be able to take more time off together, and more people will be eligible as the thresholds continue to increase. Around 180,000 families every year benefiting, and when they get back to work, mums and dads will find cheaper childcare as well. Now, those opposite have always been deeply divided about supporting hard-working Australians. We had former Treasurer Joe Hockey saying that mums were double dippers. He said that on Mother's Day, you'll remember. former Prime Minister Scott Morrison calling them rotters, the member for Goldstein saying it's not my choice that women have children, it's genetic. And now the Leader of the Opposition wants to strip paid parental leave from hard-working Australian families who are permanent residents. Last election I met a lovely family in Parramatta. The mum was a junior doctor in a hospital. The dad had a small business. They'd migrated from India. They were permanent residents. They were on track for citizenship. I don't know why, after 6 years of paying taxes, the Leader of the Opposition thinks this family doesn't deserve to benefit from paid parental leave. But he is not. They're not on a unity ticket on this. They're not on a unity ticket. Senator Andrew McLaughlin says, and I quote, "There does not appear to be any clear reasoning why hard-working, tax-paying non-citizens should be treated differently." It's up to the Leader of the Opposition to explain why he thinks they should be. On this side of the House, we are very clear. Cheaper childcare, higher wages and lower taxes for working mums, flexibility at work, a lower gender pay gap, and we're for more and better paid parental leave.
Call to the Leader of the Nationals in the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care. Older Australians are dying on the waiting list for support-at-home packages. Does the Minister take any responsibility for more than 4,800 older Australians who were deemed eligible for support but died in the past 12 months waiting to receive appropriate home care?
Give the call to the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Seniors.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Gippsland for his question. He engages regularly with my office in advocacy around members across his community and their access to aged care. It is always incredibly distressing for families and, of course, for the community more broadly, where people pass away or indeed die in circumstances where they aren't provided the appropriate care. The Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety examined these issues in great detail and provided recommendations that provided a pathway to the bipartisan approach that this parliament has taken to improving the way that we provide care, both in a residential setting and, of course, in regards to the new Support at Home program that was passed through this parliament along with the Aged Care Act and began on the 1st of November. Now, there's more work to be done. There's no doubt about that. But we are seeing unprecedented demand for aged care services. I've discussed that many times in this parliament. And we released a report on Sunday that showed that waiting times to access home care under the Support at Home program are decreasing across the board. This is a significant step forward and cause for optimism about the way that this is heading. Again, our government is utterly committed to ensuring that every older Australian can get the high quality, dignified aged care that they deserve. We'll continue to work day in and day out to make sure that those waiting times continue to come down and we get the care to people that they deserve.
Call to the honourable member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Communications. How is the Albanese Labor government helping to protect children from the dangers of online harm?
Give the call to the Minister for Communications and the Minister for Sport.
I thank the member for Dunkley for her question and for her advocacy for her powerful local organisation, Smack Talk. The Albanese government is taking world-leading action to protect Australians from online harm, especially children and young people who are the most vulnerable. Our social media minimum age law has seen 5 million under-16 accounts removed, deactivated or restricted so far.
We are already seeing the green shoots of what the world looks like for young people without the pervasive and persistent pull of social media. They are playing more sport, they are reading more books, and they are reconnecting with friends and their families in real life. eSafety is actively investigating potential non-compliance by Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok and YouTube. And if eSafety finds these platforms have systemically failed to uphold their legal obligations, I expect the Commissioner to throw the book at them in court. Because the Albanese government is on the side of parents and kids, not of platforms. And that is why we quadrupled funding to our independent regulator and why we are introducing a digital duty of care. The Albanese government's digital duty of care will change the foundation of Australia's online safety laws. It will recognise that big tech have the technology, have the resources, have the responsibility to manage harms before they occur, rather than solely relying on individuals to report harmful material post-exposure. And they will have to ensure the safety of the features they choose to adopt, like AI and like algorithms. The digital duty of care will empower eSafety to react twice as quickly to cyber abuse and to compel more transparency from tech companies to keep Australians safe online. We have a long-term view and a strategy to ensure that safety is built into online products and is not an afterthought. As Catherine West wrote in The Australian, all parliamentarians across every party should support the digital duty of care with the same multi-partisan resolve that delivered Australia's landmark social media ban. This is not a political question. It is not an issue that should be bargained or traded or compromised. It is a question about what kind of society we are. The Albanese government has got the backs of Australian families against big tech, and we will not back down.
Give the call to the member for Clark.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Resources. Minister, in the 1990s, whistleblower John Legate blew the lid on non-remediated mine sites and foretold of an eventual cost in the billions of dollars. He was vilified dreadfully but vindicated ultimately. Minister, in a 2023 CSIRO report, you noted that 240 mines will close by 2040 at an annual cost of $4 to $8 billion. Can you assure us that companies have provided for this expenditure and that taxpayers won't be left to pick up the tab?
Call to the Minister for Resources and the Minister for Northern Australia.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Clark for his question. I refer to his question. The state and territory governments regulate much of the mining rehabilitation around the country, and they are responsible for ensuring that regulatory requirements indeed exist but also are met by mine owners. So governments in all of our states and in the Northern Territory require mining companies to plan for closure from the outset and to back those plans with financial assurances, including the payment of bonds and other similar schemes. There are, however, legacy mines around the country that came to existence before the structured and very essential, important assurances I've just mentioned and the overall regulation of mining activity. And the states and the Northern Territory manage those legacy mines and the remediation and rehabilitation of them. So while not footing the bill for Commonwealth taxpayers, the Commonwealth does support responsible mine rehabilitation in a number of ways, but very importantly through the ongoing funding for investment in the Cooperative Research Centre for Transformations in Mining Economy, CRC Time. And the report that you referenced was a joint effort between the CSIRO and CRC Time. And the CRC Time is the world's only dedicated research body examining the social, economic, cultural and environmental impacts of mine closure, as well as delving into how you do effectively rehabilitate a mine. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the CEO, Dr Guy Boggs, and his team and the 75 partners in that CRC for their efforts in addressing the challenges of mine remediation And that includes those state and territory participants that I mentioned earlier and their responsibilities, and that is how they are seeking to meet those responsibilities. Rehabilitation has changed a lot recently. Geoscience Australia now has an atlas of mine waste that seeks to unlock value in previously mined and unused rock to boost our global position as a clean energy powerhouse. At Collie, in our home state of Western Australia, Lake Kapwari is transformed into a former coal mine, is now a lake enjoyed by many in the community, and Alukazini-Yabba operations show how large mineral sands projects can be returned to really great biodiversity, but equally in the southwest we see how mineral sands are returned to agricultural land. There are also new technologies, really importantly, that repurpose mine infrastructure. For example, proposals such as green gravity in the member for Cunningham's electorate that uses disused coal mine shafts to store and dispatch renewable gravitational energy. These are really important projects. There is a lot of work to do on rehabilitation. Taxpayers are not footing the bill, but the state and territory governments are primarily responsible for making sure that that rehabilitation happens. But we support them as we can. Thank you.
Call to the honourable member for Gilmore.
My question is to the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and the Territories. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering real outcomes for regional Australia? What other approaches to the regions is the government being asked to consider?
Give the call to the Minister for Emergency Management, the Minister for Regional Development, the Minister for Local Government and the Minister for Territories.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Gilmore. As my electorate neighbour, I know how fierce she is when it comes for advocating for her local communities. Mr Speaker, the Albanese Labor government is delivering real outcomes for regional Australia, investing in the infrastructure that our communities need to prosper, and delivering it through transparent grant programs, transparency that is not colour-coded. But more on that later, Mr Speaker. Our Growing Regions Fund is already delivering real results on the ground for regional communities all over the country, thanks to almost $600 million in funding. And I was pleased to recently hear Cassowary Coast Regional Council Mayor Teresa Millwood talk about the revitalisation of the Mission Beach Town Centre in Queensland, made possible by $8 million in Growing Regions funding. And she said this is going to breathe new life into Mission Beach. It's already happening. We've got people constructing new accommodation around the village green, and I've spoken to business owners and they tell me that this is just what this place needed. And we must thank the Australian government and the Queensland government, because without their support this would not have happened. And Mr Speaker, through our budget we're investing a further $750 million for future rounds of Growing Regions and Thriving Suburbs community infrastructure programs. And that's on top of the projects we're already supporting across the country through our $400 million Regional Precincts and Partnerships program. Practical, community-driven projects that create jobs, grow local economies and strengthen regional resilience. Just last month I announced $48 million for 12 new projects across regional, rural and remote Australia, like Wynyard in Tassie, where more than $9.5 million is transforming Big Heart's Artisan Precinct into a hub featuring workshops, a greenhouse, cultural spaces and purpose-built infrastructure to support regional enterprise growth. Producer Dudley Billings said this funding gives our community a chance to lean into its strengths. The trades that build our region can carry it forward. Hand-built, handmade, ultra-local and built to last. That's the Artisan Precinct. These projects show what is possible when governments partner with local communities. But, Mr Speaker, our grants programs are assessed based on merit and transparency. And how does this compare to other approaches?
Order.
And I hear a lot of chirping over there, so maybe if they listen up they might learn a few things.
Order.
Because last time they were in government they used regional grants money as their own personal election war chest. They gave out $261 million of their $272 million regional growth fund to coalition-held seats. $248 million of that funding allocated just before the 2019 election. That's what it's like under them. Pork barrelling on an industrial scale. But not under this government, because on this side of the House we're a party for all the regions, not some of them.
The call to the Prime Minister. The member for Riverina will. Nice try. The Prime Minister.
not the most unpleasant way. He's been sat down after what happened to him at the club. He was defending me. He was defending me. No, he did well.
Order.
He did well. I asked that further questions be placed on the notice page.